Good day everyone, this is Scott of Cruising Geek, and normally you'll see me doing things like this.
Wow, this is wet.
Or like this. Or even like this. But today, I want to do something a little different. As many of you know, I'm a software developer by trade. But maybe you don't know that actually I work at a company called Tableau Software, which was acquired by Salesforce in the last year or so. But I decided it would be a really fun project to use Tableau and to see insights into the current Doug Score. So I've downloaded Doug DeMuro's newest Doug Score as of the beginning of March, and I've used Tableau to find some interesting analysis. Without further ado, let's go into some of my findings. First, I was curious at which countries produced the best cars according to Doug. I was shocked to see France at first, but digging in, that's because Doug has reviewed quite a few Bugattis. Italy right after that is no surprise, but it did surprise me to see Ferrari and Lamborghini below Alfa Romeo, albeit not by much. We'll look at that more later. UK comes next, mostly due to the number of McLarens Doug has reviewed favorably, like the 600 LT and even the race car and the P1. And then Germany, which has a very interesting finding. Audi rates higher by a good amount than both BMW and Mercedes according to Doug. Though this is against the consensus that BMW is the better of the three, I appreciate this since my previous car was an Audi TTS and my Lamborghini is owned by the Audi VW group. Finally, Doug answers the Ford, Chevy, Dodge classic argument decisively by going with the lesser debated Dodge brand. However, it's a bit moot since Tesla is the clear USA winner. Here's a map showing the results with darker colors being higher Doug scores. Poor Russia isn't doing so hot. I wonder why that is. I mentioned earlier about Alfa Romeo being ahead of Ferrari and Lamborghini. Here you can also see Lamborghini trailing by a decent amount, which didn't sit well with me since I think my Gallardo is one of the best cars. However, after digging in, I filtered the cars to 80s models and up, and the results are much better for Lamborghini. That's because Doug reviewed a couple 70s front-engine Lamborghinis, specifically the Spada and the Jarma, which are pretty terrible cars honestly. Taking those out gives neck-and-neck results as I'd expect. Next was to see how the Doug score changes based on the model year. Right away, I noticed there were a lot of peaks and valleys in the line graph and was curious if there were years where only good and bad cars were made. Looking at the first peak, it shows only a Ferrari with a high score was reviewed. A similar result is seen for the other two peaks. Only cars with good scores were reviewed. However, looking at the first valley, it's clear to see both Oldsmobile and Ford had terrible average Doug scores. The other valleys are similar. Thus, it looks like there is no evidence that there's a good or bad year for cars per se, just that the good years have a lack of bad cars reviewed by Doug. I expect if Doug reviews more cars in these years, the peaks would flatten out. Finally, you can see that there's a positive trend that newer cars get higher Doug scores. This makes sense as Doug says in a lot of his videos that the Doug score is based on the current model year cars. It will be interesting to see what happens in another 5 years or so if Doug keeps reviewing cars. To keep this narration short, I'll mostly skip over my analysis of the average Doug score by state, and just mention that generally there's not enough reviews in most states to make it meaningful. However, there are a couple of interesting finds, and I'll leave that for the viewer to further explore on my public workbook, which is linked in the video description. Another interesting metric I wanted to look at was cars that Doug considered the best for daily use. On top, I took the cars with the highest differential of weekend score minus daily score, and then picked the top 10 by daily. On the bottom is simply the top 10 daily overall. Comparing with cars that had the highest outright daily scores, you can see that minivans are the best daily drivers according to Doug when not caring about the weekend/performance. However, for a more balanced daily driver, SUVs and luxury sedans offer a bit more balance, with a little bit more performance but maybe a little bit less actual daily score. I also found it interesting placing the daily versus weekend differential on the map. It's clear to see that US and Japan makes cars more biased towards daily features, while Italy, the UK, and Western Europe makes cars more balanced towards fun and performance. What cars does Doug find to be the best in terms of style? It's probably no surprise to see Ferrari with 3 entries on the list, and Aston Martin with 2. These are classically beautiful designs. But the RX-7 being a 10 is a bit odd. I cannot get past the extremely rounded edges, making the entire car look like one big amorphous blob. Also, the W8 is an interesting choice. I'd say it's 10 out of 10 for 80s design, but not sure how much that means considering other cars that were designed in that period. Another thing I was interested in was what is the cheapest way to have the most fun according to Doug. Upon examining the list, I could tell most of the cars were ones with quite hefty price tags. Unfortunately, Doug's data doesn't include the prices tested, which I guess makes sense since that does change over time. So I found all the cars with a fun factor of 10 and went on Car Gurus and auction sites if I couldn't find the car on Car Gurus and found the cheapest example without any title issues. At number 3, you have the McLaren 720S, with the cheapest one I found at just over $200,000 with just over 30,000 miles on the clock. Not too bad for such a high-performing car, though I'd still wait another 3 to 4 years for the depreciation to hit its peak. At number 2 is the BAC Mono. I found examples of this selling for between $150,000 to $200,000 USD on auction sites. This is a super fun car, though marginally usable on the road, so a better choice for heavy track users. But the number 1 by a good margin is the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4. I find these for about $100,000. Considering the rest of the cars on the list were $300,000 plus USD, I'd say that's the bargain fun car here for sure. Finally, I wanted to wrap up my analysis with a summary of the basic info. Up to this point, Doug has reviewed a total of 453 cars. The average Doug score is 57.19, but when considering cars from the 80s and up, it increases to 57.56. The standard deviation is about 9.66, and the sum of all the Doug scores is 25,909. That's a lot of Doug points. I hope you enjoyed my analysis of the Doug score using Tableau Public. I've linked the public workbook in the description below, so you can go through this story on your own, or even download the entire workbook and modify it for yourself in Tableau. If you like this type of content, or want to see more of me and my Lamborghini, definitely subscribe and click the bell below. Thanks for watching. Godspeed.
Say it one more time.